knows absolutely nothing about cybersecurity. And the first thing I want to do, because there's nothing more exciting than a history lesson, is give you a quick history. Y'all ever been to San Antonio before? Y'all ever been to Port San Antonio? You know the history of this place? Nobody? Oh, disappoints me. So what you are sitting on was one of the most important, and Jeff Baer knows this, one of the most important military aircraft installation. And it opened back in 1970. And in 1917, if you came here, what you would have seen is a whole bunch of wooden airplanes with cannons on them. And you would have seen a big empty space, big dirt runway. And on that big dirt runway, there were horse-drawn wagons. Because people knew that airplanes were going to be important, but they didn't know what airplanes were. Then a few decades later, in 1949, the U.S. Army moved signals intelligence. And that signals intelligence kind of morphed into a show. Then I came around not too long after 19. There was a growing sense there might be something important about it. But if we were having this conversation a couple of years, even though I'm George Clooney, I would have been somewhat dismissive of all these cybersecurity people. I just didn't think it mattered. It didn't matter to airplanes, and so it didn't matter to me. And then we started to have some conversations about data on airplanes. Y'all been in the 787? Wonderful airplane. There's an awful lot of computer. And I'd go from airplane conference to airplane conference. And during those conferences, we would talk about there might be something we should be worried about on cyber. And as we did that, we looked around for people who knew something about cyber. And we couldn't find anything. Then I came back to San Antonio because I knew there were some cyber people. And I said, would you all come and have a conversation? Would you come down to the conference? And they said, no. We hang out with cyber people. That's what this building was to try and bring people to. Now, when I met Catherine and Val a couple of years ago, it was an absolutely wonderful experience because they didn't want to talk about cybersecurity. They wanted to talk about the interconnectivity, manufacturing, thing. And here's what I am excited about. Partially, is that you're going to come in here and you're going to have conversations with manufacturers, with airplane people, with people who really.
Can you get somebody who knows the video part of it? Because I'm not getting the video statement.
The second reason I'm really excited is that we have a lot of
I'm just only getting the middle center screen.
not just in our community.
I'm just streaming out right now to the internet.
Those young people keep hearing
I'm streaming right now, but I'm not getting
about
the
how awful.
signal that I need.
What I love about Catherine, what I love about Val, and what I love about your organization is I don't hear the doom and gloom outside. I hear about if we secure up our infrastructure, we're going to make the world better. This building that you're sitting, we just spent $70 million to build it, not just so that we can host rock concerts in, but so that we can bring young people in and show them there's a real deal. Get some time, less than 100 yards down there, there's a museum. And in that museum, there are hands-on robots, hands-on. It's really when you do it, I want you to understand that everything in this building was designed and built for it. Every profit that we make out of this building goes into our education work. One thing, I mean this place. I've been to a lot of cyber conferences. And in those cyber conferences, they typically give you something like this thermonuclear attack on the continental United States, and it knocks down our infrastructure. What are we going to do? Or it begins with every time you get on your cell phone, somebody is watching you sit on the toilet. What are we going to do? And when you do that, what happens with most people is they shut it. And what happens with most people is they start to get a sense of estimate. And what I know you're going to do at this conference, you're going to focus on the optimistic side of it and how we. That is it. I've spent a lot of your time being boring up here. I'm going to get off the stage quickly so the smart people can talk. Thank you all for coming. Anything that we can do to be helpful for you in the next couple of days, please. Thank you all.
So it's the perimeter feeding over that?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, hello everyone. I'm going to let my panelists come on up and find themselves a seat. The blue line. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to use, that or that, but it sounds like I can hear myself speaking. Well, welcome to San Antonio if you're from out of town. If not, welcome to the board. My name is Paris Stringfellow, and I work for Simani. So Simani is the Cybersecurity Manufacturing Innovation Institute. We're a national institute focused on cybersecurity for U.S. manufacturers, sponsored by the Department of Energy. We're based out of UTSA, so University of Texas here in San Antonio. And I'm excited to talk to you guys a little bit today about cybersecurity in the manufacturing space. And here with me today, we've got a lovely panel of my friends and colleagues who are all working in this space. And I guess for the next 40 minutes or so, you can listen to a good conversation about some of the current challenges and what's going on in the space. But, and I'll do a personal introduction because it looks like maybe the names on the screen are not exactly who's sitting in the chair. So I'll get to that in just a second. But to get us started, let me give you a little bit of a background on the problem that we're facing. So in Texas, you may be aware of this. Texas is really the second largest manufacturing economy in the U.S., right behind California. So we've got about 20,000 manufacturers here in the state. 90% of them are small businesses. And guess what? Just like everyone here, they're digitizing. And with that digitization, the pursuit of profitability and energy savings, they are also opening their doors unknowingly to cyber vulnerabilities. For us, that's a big problem because when you look at the connected supply chain, the vulnerabilities of one manufacturer suddenly become the vulnerabilities of all manufacturers in the product value chain. And so the Department of Energy actually created the institute that I now work for to help investigate and help develop solutions for this problem. With that, I think what I'm going to do is do a quick introduction of all of my colleagues, and then we'll get started on a fireside chat to maybe talk through this issue. And I'm not exactly sure, but I think that we're also opening questions to the audience. So, you know what, we'll make it our own. If you have a question as we start to wrap up, I'd like to hear from you, and I'll make sure it goes into the panel. So to get started, let's see, I have Dr. Shane Staley here with me. Shane, why don't you raise your hand? Yeah. So Shane is a senior industrial control system cybersecurity professional at Iowa National Labs. And he's a leader in manufacturing and the IT/OT workforce education space. So I've worked with Shane for a number of years now, and he's pretty famous for the development of a particular tool we call CyberChamp. And so CyberChamp is an organizational assessment tool that helps companies understand cybersecurity readiness by looking at their business goals, the policies of the, and there's the cybersecurity.
I'm getting it. Yeah. So yeah, he's feeding.
So next we have Mr. Alan Snyder. Alan, how would you raise your hand there?
That's fine. But if they put anything on the center stage, I
Alan
will
is
do for free.
CEO of Now
So that's
Secure,
So
which is a
anything that
global
comes to center stage, you
security
say
testing software
this one
company.
moves to the center stage.
Now Secure
Then
provides
everyone
security coverage
outside in the
and
world
support for mobile
will
app
actually see
developers and
only that
security
one.
teams,
So this is like I'm
including
feeding,
continuous
looking back from
automated
YouTube.
testing, mobile app pen
So
testing,
this is what I'm seeing from
and
YouTube right
app
now.
supply chain analysis.
So when they go to a graphic,
So Alan
you
has
see
a
the
long
graphic.
history as a leader
Yeah,
in
that's what's going
IT
to happen.
and
It's the
operational
program.
security
Okay.
and he's
Can they
run
put the graphic on the
multiple
side?
IT security
We can ask.
companies. So
Just always keep the graphic on the side.
Yeah, keep graphic on the side.
Yeah. Okay.
Next we have Mr. Rob Dennis.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Rob is the executive director of corporate relations at Augusta University, where he supports industry engagement at the Georgia Cyber Center. So the GCC is creating this ecosystem where government, academia, and private industry can all work together to train workers, inform policy, and solve these complex cybersecurity challenges for Georgia, and I think for the world, hopefully. So they're actually on a team that was recently awarded a large Economic Development Association project to advance AI in U.S. manufacturing. And so under this project, they'll be working with Georgia Tech to reskill and train U.S. Manufacturing workers around cybersecurity concepts. Okay. Very last, we have a friend and personal colleague, Mr. Brian Lucky. He's works with me at the Cybersecurity Manufacturing Innovation Institute, CyMani, where he leads as the Chief Engineering Officer. So Brian's worked for 15 years with the U.S. Department of Defense as a cybersecurity specialist in a number of roles, I think. But most recently, he came to us from a successful computer and network security startup called Redacted. And in that role, you established the security professional services division. And Brian, I have to say, I was looking up Redacted on LinkedIn the other day, and their slogan is "We make nothing happen." Is that you? That's a good one. Nothing bad happened, hopefully. So with that, let's get started. Just kind of wing it. But can you hear me now? Great. So I think this question is for Rob. And what we'll do is, we can just ask questions. And certainly, Rob, if you want to respond, please go ahead. And anyone else, feel free to jump in and fill out your Rob's side. So I guess I wanted to get started with, I know this that we've all been hearing about cybersecurity breaches and news of the JDS meat manufacturing production attack that disrupted their operation a couple years back. We know that manufacturers are one of the industry's most targeted sectors. Okay, but in your experience, you've been working with industrial companies, Cyber Center. What do you think is preventing actors from adopting good cyber security practices? The cyber hygiene, what's stopping them?
Thank you for the question. I think there are a number of reasons. Primarily, they just don't awareness. And in Georgia, we've been, after the last 9 years, we've been the number 8 or 8 of the last, been the best place to do this. And there's a real concern right now that our manufacturing sector is struggling because when small, rural, underserved, resource manufacturers experience a greed for accuracy that they're not agile enough to respond. They haven't. The Georgia AIM grant, the $65 million opportunity that we partnered with Georgia Tech on, our role in that would be to go out to rural manufacturers, help them with an assessment underwritten by the grant. We've partnered with one of our industry partners to do that. So there's 352 checkpoints. They'll go through. About 50 of those are physical checkpoints. The rest are
digital technology through. So there's an appliance, 10 line that allows that to be explored. And then from there, there'll be a meeting and maybe even a tabletop exercise that leverages the Georgia Cyber
Vote for
to
Carl.
show various scenarios that might take place without any sort of remediation. And then we're working with other universities, University of Georgia, 26 of them, along with the technical college, to identify interns who have worked side by side with SMEs in those manufacturing facilities to remediate some of the challenges they have. In a perfect world, we'd love to be able to remediate all of them. I think it'll be a step-by-step process. That's one example of how we're getting after it. But I do think it's back to your question, simply an awareness. Yes, a lot of leadership and also the human factor plays a significant role in how bad actors are going to infiltrate.
Just to pull the string on that a little bit, talked about awareness and the being buried. I think that makes a lot of sense. You know, again, just to unpack that a bit, would you say that if manufacturers were aware of their vulnerability, that they were connected, they knew that they were opening themselves up in the place, that they would take action, preventative?
I think a lot of them would, you know, people's eyes tend to glaze over when we talk about too many statistics. More than half of those manufacturers following a breach or an insult will go out of this. And so through this grant and really working, I don't want to get ahead of myself on the Georgia Department of Economic Development and how there may be incentives to be afforded to manufacturers in the state who are willing to achieve certain criteria. A schedule of incentive commiserate with that. But I think there are other ways to get after it, but you asked, is it just awareness and seeing what they can find? I think when they realize how vulnerable they are.
I'm looking at it now. If there's any interest commenting?
Is something that you just put in prepared. When we talk about awareness, I've covered school that there's talking about workplace, doing manufacturing is workforce evaluations. The water is really not getting to the end of the road, just trying to establish. So we're when you talk in terms of awareness, the yearly CBT isn't going to cut it, or the once a year taking some kind of awareness thing that Rob was talking about, I think is critical, and getting management leadership involved in discussion at the vulnerability level and not just kind of brushed over. I think that's a bit of a problem, is we're thinking awareness at different levels of awareness, but this vulnerability and threat awareness is not so.
In our experience, the Manufacturing Institute talking about manufacturing, we've also heard comments around there being a lack of an ROI that they can really justify. For a lot of these small businesses, we've heard that they're running on tight margins as it is, and they really have to understand risk that they're exposed to in order to justify investment. And I would just say that I'm sure that's the case for a lot of small businesses, but manufacturing specifically seems that's the issue running again. And and another issue is around their lack of workforce, their lack of help, right? And having the people available to help them this journey through. And so, Shane, my next question will fall in your lap here. Actually, I heard a statistic the other day that said that 17% of company's cybersecurity teams are
You're
understaffed.
getting what you need? Yes, sir. I'm getting. As long as it stays in the middle thing, I'm getting. Okay. Thank you for your.
Whatever's on the middle screen is going to come to you.
Exactly. Just don't. Just whoever is controlling that camera and everything, just let them know whatever slides or anything that they want to do it. If they can put it in the middle screen, but if it can be a split screen, that's also fine.
That was something we'd have to set up in advance. We
Okay.
could do that for tomorrow.
Yes, let's do that for
Because you don't
tomorrow.
want to be messing with
With
that
that.
live and cause bigger problems.
Yeah. And another thing is that then fine, they can just switch it for 2 minutes because this is coming from the external right now.
The idea of the businesses just doing.
Just keeping
So you're good.
I'm
check on you.
yeah, thank you, sir. I forgot your name.
Philip Nelson.
Philip Mills.
First one is.
spoke on the call, was he there?
I may have been on the call. I
We're no longer
usually
there.
we built out this system.
Oh,
We're not in a
We're
position
coming in
where
to make sure that it's
I
going.
have to-
So we wanted to make sure we're happy.
okay. So where are you at?
We're here. We travel. We work with the NFL, the NBA, they make venues,
Okay.
X Games, all that stuff.
Oh, wow.
But we built out all the lighting in here, all the TV stuff.
Wow.
video.
The other one is.
So it's pretty fun project.
Well, if I'm ever bored with my cyber stuff,
You have to call me. I'll bring you a card tomorrow.
Okay.
Nice to see you. I just want to check.
Thank you,
So
sir.
what does that mean? Well, if we really think about this seriously, and we have an understanding of our current mission objectives, have we taken a look at the cybersecurity mission, how they tied into the business objectives, are those two separate things that we just do to check the box? So I think it's really important that from a workforce development perspective, that it's a business conversation, not necessarily a cyber conversation, but it changes the entire thing. And that's part of what I was saying.
Thank you.
I'll just add on to that. I think that's what makes these internship roles so pivotal in how industry is able, or manufacturing in particular, is able to get some of that talent. And we found particularly with what we refer to as the TCSG, Technical College System of Georgia, there are a lot of students who would prefer to stay in the town they grew up in or not move that far away from. And so to be able to have access to that talent, to bring that talent, for them to have the requisite skills they need, working side by side with an SME, may be a way to incrementally build that awareness and put the protocols in place to allow particularly some of the rural under-resourced manufacturers on more side of moving this over forward.
Yeah, just to amplify that, one of the things the tool does that I didn't talk about, which I appreciate, thanks for that reminder, roles and responsibilities are not well defined in the organization. So one of the things that this evaluation does is helps you to see the resource constraints you have in your current people. And I think that's one of the bigger issues with upskilling and reskilling. We have people that are chief engineers or are people that have other roles that they're so good, we just give them more. So, hey, do the cyber thing, do the IT, do this, right? And the tool that I developed, it actually provides you that visual of the resource constraints that you have in your environment. So, for example, do I even know if I need to upskill or reskill? Another thing that I see often is there's a knee-jerk reaction to go right away to a consultant. I think that it needs to have, that's okay, consultants are great, but if that's our only play, maybe we're missing the mark on brand loyalty. There's a lot of people in your company you could retrain, you could upskill, you can put them in positions because they're already there. Somebody's working for 10 or 15 years that has some kind of technical capacities, utilize that, find a way to turn them into, maybe a cyber professional, help you in that regard. So I think the knee-jerk reaction to do all outsourcing is probably a mistake. If you do that, I would encourage you to use outsourcing as a way to infuse and support your current workforce as they learn and grow, and then maybe eventually can, weed out. So just
Yeah, that's interesting. And again, just to pull the workforce thread a little bit, we've often talked about this challenge, this disparity that manufacturers uniquely face. And that's this idea that, you know, the IT security has typically, it's grown, right? It's a domain that many companies deal with, and there is plenty of training for an IT professional to learn cybersecurity skills, per se. But what's happened to the manufacturers is their OT, their operational technology, their CNC machines, their lathes, their presses, everything is becoming connected. It's becoming smart. We're upgrading the sensors, the equipment comes to you already intelligent, and now your manufacturing floor is suddenly responsible for securing this OT technology. And so for a company who may already have an IT department, you know, the question becomes, who's responsible for securing this OT, this operational technology? And we've heard a lot of challenges with small companies dealing with that line of responsibility, that division. And, you know, I think there's a lot of ways to look at this, but, and I don't necessarily have data for this piece, but in talking with folks, they're typically trying to upskill and retrain the manufacturing floor workers to now augment them with cybersecurity skills, rather than to take the IT individual and train them on operational requirements and operational technologies. And that's a unique kind of challenge, I think, with the manufacturing space, because now what we've seen is that there really isn't great training and education available for that blue-collar worker. You know, they don't need necessarily theory and background in Python and whatnot. They just need to know how to secure their equipment right now. And that's a gap that we see on a regular basis. Does anyone want to comment on that? Or agree or disagree?
All right, sounds good. If I can tell them.
I try to go a little bit in a different direction. I think one of the points you talked to.
I tried moving it on my end and I couldn't get in time.
I believe that whoever in this is manufacturing and selling a product, right? Whether it be a product that goes on the manufacturing floor, for the manufacturing process, or the end result that manufacturer has an obligation to make sure the products they're selling are shipped securely. And so we see a lot of work with selling products to the end consumer, because they want to make sure the products that are provided to the consumer aren't going to cause harm to the consumer. Right, whether it's your car and it's driving, or those sorts of things. Well, I believe that same principle applies, that if I'm a small manufacturer and I buy a piece of equipment, I should have a reasonable expectation that whoever made that piece of equipment that I put in my factory floor is safe and secure. Then I think they have an obligation to also operate it in a safe and secure manner and fashion, as we have security and those things. But in my view, that's where you see, I think that if you move from that awareness piece, it also, you've got to figure out how to make things more actionable. Because it's not just enough to be aware. If I can't act on it, the awareness is being accepted, but I can't do anything. And I think that some of there was just the conference in the White House, I guess it was last week, around security labels for IoT. In my opinion, that is hugely impactful, because it actually will give people the ability to do something that have information that they wouldn't otherwise have, so they can say, how do I judge this piece of equipment versus that piece of equipment when I'm going to purchase it? And it will ideally change behaviors, not just on the purchase side, but on the production side. So in my view, that it can get here soon enough, because it's not just, it's more than the awareness, it has to be on action.
Yeah.
Thanks, Alan. I think obviously did such a good job. So, again, to unpack that a little bit more, I like the idea of having things that allow you to focus on profitability, and production. But again, as we know, this equipment and tools, they're increasing the vulnerability landscape. So I want to kind of ask you a little bit about your experience in the mobile space. As you explained to me, many of these intelligent and smart pieces of equipment are now coming with apps, apps that don't just allow you to monitor and enhance your awareness of the equipment's performance, but in some cases allow for control. What do these apps and what do these kind of increasing enhanced technologies due to the exposure of the manufacturer?
Excellent. So toca আমি 5 মিনিট মধ্যে ফোন করছি, ঠিক আছে? তাহলে ফিট পাচ্ছে।
So I'll give you some fun stats just for prepping this. I thought it'd be fun to look at some of the CNC and robotic arm and equipment that might go to the factory floor and the mobile apps connected to it. On our lowest fidelity analysis, 25% of equipment volume. So if we look deeper, I'm sure that percentage will go up. And so in our view, this is, and these are apps that are being used to actually directly interact and control the device. It wasn't a manual that says how to repair it or things like that. It was, no, I'm actually legitimately interacting to the and connected into the device to control it and able to interact and change. So to me, that's where if that mobile app can be breached, so can that piece of equipment, right? And then I can get control of all sorts of things that previously you do not want anyone to be able to do control of and see. And so in our view, this is where what we see happening is folks at the mobile app and say, oh, it's so small, it can hurt us. It's fundamentally the network connection into your way, well, those cars are communicating with each other. 5G will help enable that scenario because now the cars can talk to one another in real time, peer to peer, as opposed to going through a cloud. So, and you need that high speed piece. Well, what that says too is that each of those, there's software running in there somewhere to do that communication. That's in essence going to become a mobile app that is using the 5G protocol to go do that. So I suspect, and I would expect, you're going to start to see things like 5G also going on the factory floor. This is, say, I'm manufacturing chips and wafers, and I need my machines in alignment in terms of how the chips are being laid down across the wafer. So I need to get 6 machines to coordinate together, right, as one. I think you're going to see a lot more of that, and I think it'll take a while for 5G to get to the factory floor. But when it does, it's going to very much change how things function and operate the same way it will with 5G used for autonomous vehicles or other things in the environment. That's a totally new attack surface, right? It's a brand new protocol that's never been out there before.
You know, the attack surface as it moves up the supply chain. Can you talk a little bit about some of the work or some of the efforts that the Simon organization is doing to help address these challenges for the country's manufacturers?
Sure. Apologize, there's a lot of echo up here, so if we're not quite coherent, we're happy to repeat something to you. But from the scientific side of the house, it's been mentioned a lot that a lot of this is human driven, right? The number one way that big companies get reached is through phishing, which is that humans doesn't matter email. But humans also wrote the code that enable these vulnerabilities to begin in the first place. It's the humans that rush to market with things that aren't really done that exacerbate this problem. And we always look and want to look at the end of this instead of the genesis of the problem. So humans can also solve this, right? And that's where, you look at an organization like Simon that has two arms. That's, I think, fundamental ways we get ahead of this problem or through research, looking at ideas that are not continuing to repeat the same thing that is increasing the attack surface at a rate larger than we can close. That's an unbalanced equation that is going to not end well for anyone in this group or in the world, really. So if we look at research about how we can take fundamental system design principles and put things like formal security guarantees, like Alan mentioned. I know that I picked this up, example, this Energy Star, right? We can buy a refrigerator that has an Energy Star. It meets a standard. And that standard allows you to make a confident decision. We're going to have to do this in software design in a more formalized method than we are now to solve this problem. And then the second one that's been mentioned by every panelist thus far, which is training. We need to catch up. We need to acknowledge that everybody is part of cybersecurity in the modern world, that everyone's going to play a part in developing successfully. In the manufacturing space, that's empowering people and giving them confidence that if you can run that CNC every that centrifugal printer that's fusing metals together with explosive materials, you can have a close support there. You can see some guy who can teach you this is okay, it's not scary. I think those are two fundamental principles of research and training are what are going to get us out of this gully that we've been digging ourselves out of in the last 10 to 15 years, I would say.
No, that's great. Anyone else want to add to that?
Right?
Oh, I have one thing real quick is that our built is it's about 700,000 cybersecurity jobs are open right now. We're in a community that's military. Augusta, Georgia, was fortunate to have Army Cyber Command relocate to Augusta, Fort Worth. And what we find is 1,700 individuals separate from Fort Worth, transition out of the military each year at Fort Worth, Georgia. More than half of those whole technology, sophisticated technological positions And that same population is also clear. And so we have been very fortunate to be able to capture those. Some of them are interested in the great completion, but a lot of them are interested in that certification so that they can integrate seamlessly into the workforce on the fastest pathway possible. And in their programs out here to help communities, large and small, do accomplish this. One of them is a grant through the Department of Labor that allows us to upskill and retrain not just soldiers, but their spouses as well, to go into whether it's manufacturing or some other area of cyber discipline. And we experience remarkable success with that.
Well, thank you for that. That's a good point as well. You know, we're talking about the uniqueness of the manufacturing space in Georgia and in Texas here as well. You know, I mentioned there are over 20,000 manufacturers here in Texas, and the majority of them are in the defense industrial base. So they're producing equipment, materials, and products for the U.S. government, and the quality of those products is paramount. You can all imagine what can happen if we produce a flawed or a compromised or a vulnerable, piece of defense equipment. And so the need for this is just incredible. If I may, I'd like to kind of close out and just do a little bit of a roundtable here. And have you all maybe comment if there's a single action that you would kind of recommend to a manufacturer who's beginning their cybersecurity journey. What would you tell them to do? What would you tell them? How would you tell them to begin? What advice would you give them? How about we start you?
I would start, recognize that regardless of your industry in manufacturing, that it is in all probability technologically sophisticated, and that you owe it to yourself as well as your employers to have someone come in and do an assessment. There are plenty of companies that will come in and do the assessment at a reduced charge or no charge. And then, once the risk tolerance is established, the leadership will make decisions about what the way forward looks like. But that goes back to awareness. I do think it's such an important attribute of leadership.
I'll just say asset management. We're actually talking about security, the safety age. IoT is a huge problem if you look at statistics. Most manufacturers right now have more IoT devices than have computers. Are you aware of that in your environment? You realize that asset management is huge. So that would be my recommendation.
For me, it goes back to what I said earlier. I think that the first place to start is for that manufacturer to hold their suppliers accountable to be selling them product and equipment that is secure. And to actually just ask that question and to act for proof, right? How do we know that it's secure? And to understand what they do to make sure that it stays secure as they're getting additional software updates and changes. So to me, that's step number one, is just making sure that their suppliers are taking proper steps and to try and deal with suppliers that actually have a good answer as opposed to a fact. So that's where I would start, and that to me is the most simplistic of all things. Just make sure that your starting foundation has a reasonable level.
Out here, it's intelligible out here for what that's worth. And we're back in the back of the building.
I echo the other three. I would say, visibility is okay. If you can't see it, you cannot make a decision on it for better or for worse. And so too many companies that we run across that do not fully understand, one, what they even have, how it's integrated, what to do in this case. And so I think a lot of this is, when you talk about other vendors, right? There are plenty of published vendor security questionnaires online. Just give you an idea of the type of company that you're accepting things from or buying things from. And then from there, you can make an informed decision on how to put that in your risk table and how you tolerate the risk. And that's how you can hopefully not pass that forward to the next place on the supply chain. I think COVID taught us all that we're incredibly dependent on the supply chain.
And whenever we look at this, we are also very interdependent on the supply chain. I think the most staggering thing that I heard about supply chain was the first COVID vaccine took cooperation in the supply chain, not in research, in the supply chain delivery of 70 countries. So just let that sink in for a minute. To get vaccine out, 70 countries had to be working together to make that happen. So when we look at this problem, it is going to take a large effort, a lot of us together. We can do our part by understanding our piece of the puzzle through visibility. I think that's the key for every organization.
Well said. With that, I think we've come up on time here, and before we conclude, I just wanted to say thanks again for having us up here, and a big thanks to Val and to the rest of the CFF team for pulling together this really incredible and growing community. It's been an honor to be a part of it, and I hope to continue our engagement with them and to move this awareness for cybersecurity forward. So with that, thank you very much, and thanks to my panel for being here today, for your responses. I'm sorry, it felt like a Teams meeting where the echo was on.